Hello, and welcome to Why I Love Warhammer, the series where I will go on a borderline unscripted ramble about why I love something in the world of Warhammer. On this episode, it's Space Wolves. And I already did a video about why I love Space Marines as a general thing, but I feel like Space Wolves need a bit more love, both lore-wise and in terms of the models. So I want to explain why I love Space Wolves. From a lore perspective, I love Lehman Russ because from what I do know about Lehman Russ, he's a bit unhinged in a way that I think makes for a really interesting character. I'm not going to say whether or not I approve or disapprove of the actions of Lehman Russ. A few people do say that if Gilliman had gone to get Magnus instead of Lehman Russ, then the whole heresy might have ended up very different. I'm not here to pass judgment on the morality of the characters or their actions. Just from a pure entertainment standpoint, I enjoy Lehman Russ. I enjoy the weaponry. I love the Viking aesthetic that a lot of them have. And of course, I love the dogs. If anyone's been following the channel for any length of time, you know that I really enjoy models that have some kind of non-horse steed, which Space Wolves have in abundance. But I love the special Space Wolf stuff. So first one here is Björn the Fell-Handed. I love this guy, the Dreadnought A. I love Dreadnaughts. These walking box coffins are brilliant to me. I love the way they look. And with the Space Wolves one, and especially Björn, I love this heraldry. It's so intricate and detailed. It's just a beautiful model to behold. I've got a friend who owns this model, and it's not the centerpiece of his Space Wolves faction, but it should be, because it's the model I can't take my eyes off. And I love that claw thing it's got in its left hand. I think that looks really cool. And Lloyd, I love that Björn is a survivor from the Heresy era, unless my knowledge of the lore has been mistaken here. But it's one of the few characters who was there for the Heresy that's still around in 40k, who isn't a Primarch or a Custodes. I really like this model. I really love the lore behind it. I'm a sucker for dreadnaughts. And yeah, the wisdom of Björn as well. It's something I can't undersell. But like I say, it's not just Björn. I love all the Space Wolf dreadnaughts. So this guy's got the classic axe and shield. It's like the runes on the axe. It's got that Viking thing going on. It's got this skull thing on the coffin part of the dreadnought, which I think is fascinating. But also, melee dreadnaughts are just a thing I really enjoy. I think if they were faster, it might be a bit more gameplay viable, but they're tough, pondering things that go at the battlefield. And yeah, this guy's wielding an axe and a shield. That's so cool to me. It's this, yeah, it's a Viking, and I love axes as weapons. I think axes are really cool, and it's just a beautiful model. And I'm a sucker for snow on bases. I love having a snowy base. In fact, I wasn't going to show off this model, but in this video, but I did put some snow on the base of this model because I love how snow works as basing, and I love iciness as an aesthetic as well. So again, these very icy runes on on these dreadnaughts, I think is something just really, really phenomenal that I just think is really underrated, and it's just something I really love about the Space Wolves. Another one, I like this one. It's got the kind of the wolfen inside, so it's a bit savage, and again, focus on the claws. I love these kind of Wolverine style claws, and again, this one's got so much heraldry on it, just to really denote this is a Space Wolves dreadnought. This is for the Space Wolves. This isn't a Space Wolves paint job and Space Wolf transfers on another dreadnought. This is a purely custom Space Wolf dreadnought that just truly belongs there, and I just think it looks amazing. I love this little crystal that it's got on the top here. It's and again these Viking runes. I just think it's a really beautiful aesthetic. And again, it's got this gun down here, so it's not just melee, but these claws are phenomenal, and they're kind of they're very icy in appearance. Wolfen. I love the Wolfen. I love this kind of crazed werewolf thing they've got going on. I'm a sucker for big ice axes. I'm a sucker for a good Warhammer. I wouldn't be unhappy if they updated the sculpt. It's a bit peculiar. They look a bit like they look a little bit anime in this, which could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on your personal preferences. But as a concept, I love these guys with these icy claws, love the weaponry. And again, this kind of werewolf aesthetic I think is really cool for the Space Wolves. And let's face it, if the Blood Angels get to be vampires, the Space Wolves should get to be werewolves. It's far more present. I just think, and again, I just think they're really cool and underrated. And yeah, I think they should get a new sculpt. The other thing that's only really just occurred to me, didn't anticipate talking about this when I hit record, is these guys would be so cool in Blood Bowl. Take the heads, take the pose, and then maybe rejigger the weaponry a little bit. Get rid of any guns. Yeah, get rid of the weapons. But keep the basic sculpts and body shapes. These guys would be brilliant in Blood Bowl. I timed my preparation for this video right, because this is one that's made to order ones that's only kind of back for a limited period. I think it's really cool. It's just classic. Got a gun, got a big claw with a big power fist. Got a fur coat for Space Wolves. It's got the Space Wolf heraldry here. I think it looks really cool. It's got a little gem here. Really classic, proper Viking aesthetic with hair I could only dream of having. Ponytail here. I don't know what that's about. It could be a thing if in the Song of Ice and Fire books, the Dothraki have this thing where if they lose in combat, their hair gets cut. And so the longer their hair is, the better the warrior they are, because that means they've not lost. I'm wondering if that might be a similar thing where like that's the ponytail they've cut from an opponent they've defeated. Say, look, I'm a good warrior. I have slain a warrior who had hair this long. I don't actually know. If you're a Space Wolf player who's really up on the lore, please let me know in the comments, because I find this faction fascinating and love to know more and more and more about them. This guy here, again, just a cool Viking thing. He's got bald head, good scraggly beard, Warhammer shield, again, beautiful, covered in Viking runes. I love this anvil on top. Again, really kind of brings that home a bit and makes sense aesthetically with the hammer. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to think he stood there, forging stuff on his head, but the overall impact from the model, I think, is really cool. Love a good shield. Why wouldn't you have a shield if you're having a melee weapon? Again, covered in runes and Space Wolf imagery. And these pliers down here give them that bit more of a blacksmith vibe. I just think it's a really awesome model. This guy here, again, it's got a really cool standard. Again, he's got an axe. It's one of those made to order models, so the face is from an older sculpt, but it's got kind of werewolfy fangs. I'm going to take a quick moment just to say that I love the colour you get for Space Wolves. It's such I love that shade of blue, that kind of iciness to it, but yeah, it's just one that I think is, just bears talking out. Space Wolves have a really cool colour scheme, and it's not like a standard blue. It's not like Ultramarines blue or Night Lords blue. It stands out in a really interesting way. I knew a guy who used to collect Space Wolves as a secondary army, and he used to use like Airfix paints for them, because it was how he could get that shade of blue more accurately. I'm pretty sure that the Space Wolves blue now to have that effect in, but I just think it's still just a really beautiful colour that Space Wolves get to have. Okay, this guy here, again, proper Viking thing going on. He's even got the Odin slash Woden raven going on here. He's got this wolf pelt that I think is really aesthetically works really well. Covered in runes, covered in this heraldry and imagery. I love this weapon. This just big staff just to whack people with. I think it's a really beautiful model, and it really leans into that Viking aesthetic. I think that's really important with a faction like the Space Wolves. I think that it's very easy to have a faction be just a color scheme, and whereas I think that works, and if someone were to tell me I'm wanting to get into Space Marine, if someone told me I want to get into Space Marines, but I love all the factions equally, what I told them to do is to paint them in whatever color you want, so that you can say that they are a sub-chapter of whichever one you want on the day. So it's not obviously one thing or another. But if someone said to me, I really like Space Wolves, I want to go Space Wolves, I'd say brilliant, lean into Space Wolves as much as you can, and get as much, and make sure as much of what you can get is the unique sculpt. Because if you like Space Wolves, if you love that aesthetic from the color scheme, but also the heraldry and stuff, you want to lean into it, right? And this guy's so perfectly Viking that it's just a beautiful mod, and it works really well for the faction. I'd really think this would be a really good model to, a really good model to have in a Space Wolf collection. Again, this guy, not the Space Wolf colors, but just a really cool model. I love this little this thing here, this kind of skull thing he's holding in one hand. He's got, I love this kind of hammer axe type thing. He doesn't quite have the same runes, but something about this model that I just can't not love. It's just a really cool sculpt. That he's got the mead horn as well. Just a really cool sculpt that I think just belonged in a video about loving Space Wolves. Okay, Thunderwolf Cavalry. I love me a good steed. Here, these ones are all the steeds. I love the aesthetic of these wolves. They're proper like dire wolves, like wolves that are huge, and I love the poses, the kind of riding in on them. Also, I like that they look after them. Like this one's lost a leg, but it's been replaced with a mechanical leg. It's nice. It's respect for them. And also, again, wielding a big hammer with guns, I think it's really cool. Chainswords are metal as anything. I could probably do a video just on chainswords and chain weapons because they're just phenomenal pieces of equipment. And this one here has got a little Thousand Suns helmet on its base. It just speaks to that ancient rivalry between the wolves and the Thousand Suns. And it's always nice to have that kind of base decoration, because aside from the lore aspect of it, it means you have a chance and that opportunity to try out painting another colour scheme and another army, even if it's just a little bit. So if you wanted to have a go at painting some Thousand Suns stuff, well, that's a Thousand Suns helmet right there that you can just give it a go. And if it doesnn't work, you don't have to stick it on the base. You can just take a spare helmet from a helmeted Space Marine, spray it, just paint it all black and say, okay, it's a Black Legion one, or whichever color you think is best suited. Paint it that kind of metallic grey and say it's a Grey Knights helmet from that battle between the Grey Knights and the Space Wolves, where, as much as I love my Grey Knights, the Space Wolves came away alive, so that's a victory. It's a loss for the Grey Knights. You can paint that up however you like and just have that little bit of practice with try out something new. So Thousand Suns helmet there, just I think works really well. I love the colouring on the colour scheme on these shoulder pads. More so this guy. This guy looks a little bit McDonald's, but the knees and these bits, I just think they look really cool as well. And I love the wolves. Same deal here, that this guy's also got a bit more heraldry on his armor, and he's got the big axe. I'm a sucker for a big axe like that with the frost patterns. I love the position of this wolf. It's such a dynamic pose, and with him being a named character, being monopose is not so much of an issue. And again, Thousand Sun down here just to bring home that rivalry a bit. And again, just a really good hair, really good beard and moustache. It looks a bit like the facial hair looks a bit like the TTS version of Rogal Dawn, which I always like. Um, in theory, I think you could take this guy's head, transplant it onto a Centurion model, and make yourself a TTS era Rogal Dawn. Same deal here, but even more Viking with the Wolverine claws. I love this wolf pose. It looks really majestic. Like this guy doesn't look so much like he's just in the midst of battle like this guy does. This guy looks like he's just had an amazing victory, and he's walking down the hall on his wolf to say, "Victory is ours." I think that's a really cool pose. I think it would work really well as a warlord, and there's just so much personality in this model. And I think that really carries over for so much of the Space Wolf range. Again, your classic wolves, I just think they're really, really cool. I love dogs. I love the poses are really dynamic, but they're not so dynamic that if you have loads of them, they'll look interchangeable. Like they look like wolves hunting, and I think that's just a really cool thing. Cyberwolf again, all the positives of these guys, but also I always take it that the cybernetic enhancements are the Space Wolves kind of caring for and respecting the animals so that if they are injured, they are repaired. I just think that's wholesome. At least that's how I read it. Maybe you read it differently, and maybe if maybe you view these as like improvements to the animal that was previously just a regular wolf, and maybe for you that enhances the setting, maybe it adds character. I'm not going to fault you for that reading. um I personally like my reading, but my reading is playing into my specific biases and preferences for what I'd like my factions to be. I don't think there's an invalid reading really, and even if there were, well, yeah, as the old phrase goes, everything is canon, not everything is true. Something could be pro or anti Space Wolf propaganda. Maybe my reading is Thousand Suns propaganda. They look at the Space Wolves, they think they're Vikings, but really they're soft. Or maybe it's pro Space Wolf propaganda to say, no, we care for everything. We're a good, wholesome faction. Salamander's got nothing on us. There's no wrong reading for the lore like this. It's what makes sense to you and improves your personal enjoyment of the game and the Legion and the faction and the setting. Um, like I've got my reading, you'll have yours. I'd be keen to know what your reading of everything is. I do love reading the comments for these videos. And maybe you will say something. Maybe there's something I'll go, oh, that's a good point, and it will change how I see the faction. Um, I know these guys aren't the 40k faction, but again, I love the animals in the Horus Heresy setting as well, with the Horus Heresy era Thousand Suns as well. But I think these guys might be word bearers. But again, I just think this is really cool. One thing I love with the Horus Heresy character series is that the basing is really detailed and aesthetic, and it means you don't have to worry so much about am I putting my tufts of grass on correctly. You can just enjoy the model and paint up the model. I love these guys. They're kind of wolfish, kind of bearish. It's a bit like Bjorn in The Hobbit, which in a sense links back to Bjorn the Fell-Handed. Maybe there's a link in the names. Maybe I'm reading into something that isn't there, but I think it's cool. But yeah, these are really cool. I just think they're really interesting models. Okay, final one. I'm aware I've talked for nearly 20 minutes about Space Wolves, but final model from this. Logan Grimnar on Storm Rider. I love this model. It's so it beautifully captures so much of the Space Wolves. It's got the wolves as the steed, carrying the chariot. Sci-fi. The chariot looks like a boat, so it's kind of more like Viking thing. It's got that longboat aesthetic to it. It's got the wolf. It's got the wolf head sculpture on the front, again like a Viking longboat. Grimnot himself, he's beautifully there. He's full on Viking aesthetic. The braided facial hair, the long pelt on his back, huge axe with the gem. I think that's really cool. This model was one of the first Space Wolf models I actually saw in person. It was a friend of mine who was a huge Space Wolves fanatic, and he painted this guy up to look like Santa Claus. So instead of the classic Space Wolf blue armor, it was red, and yeah, just the whole thing made it look like Santa's sleigh but with wolves. And that's such a wonderful image to me of this guy being Santa Claus. That it just, yeah, weirdly wholesome, just good fun. And I think again that's more of the, yeah, it was a fun kind of balance between this kind of very screamy, shouty Viking and the wholesomeness of Santa. But yeah, really, I think that, yeah, kind of concluding off, I love Space Wolves, and I think most of it is due to how characterful the models are. I think that's just a really a lovely way of displaying the faction, and it means that your models are always going to have a lot of personality to them, which is something that, yeah, is just really wonderful in this hobby. I guess if you want to leave a comment below that is just, your favorite Space Marine color scheme. Like, I love this light blue for Space Wolves. Maybe your favorite is the Dark Angel. What's your favorite color scheme for Space Marines? And if you wanted to do all the nice YouTube pleasantries, the liking, subscribing, notification bell, that'd be brilliant. And if you want to share this around with a few friends, that'd be brilliant too. Maybe send it to a Space Wolf player in your life so that so they can hear someone else talk about why Space Wolves are brilliant. With that, I hope you have a great day, and until next time.